Hello and welcome to the Deception Tips podcast, where you will learn amazing cues to detect deceit that will help you read people like never before. I'm your host, Spencer Kaufman. Let's get started. Welcome to episode 56 of the Deception Tips podcast. Last time we talked about a behavior that was related to the hands, and it was a grooming gesture, also a preening gesture. Now, people do these when they want to make themselves appear a little bit better or a little more clean or professional or neat, or choose any words you like, than they were before. And it's also something that happens when they're either nervous or bored or any of those types of deals, when all of a sudden they have nothing really to do but look at themselves and see all the things that are wrong with them. We talked about this relating to the hands, and that people will try to make their hands a little better, such as biting their fingernails or cuticle picking, things like that. This behavior is indicative of tension and anxiety, and I hope that over the last week you have taken the time to observe other people a little bit and see if you noticed anybody using grooming gestures on their hands. Maybe you yourself are a nail biter or something like that, and you've noticed it on yourself. Hopefully you've done a little introspection and examined why you were doing it. What was the cause? Was there something going on around you? Were you thinking about something, etc.? And if you saw it on other people, I hope you took the time to kind of think about why it might be happening on that other person. Because those types of behaviors are due to stress and anxiety. If you remember, it was the third one about our hands that we've talked about. We also talked about wringing the hands, which was in episode 51, and massaging the hand in episode 52. So, if you don't remember those, go back, have another listen, or check out the video on YouTube, or also the material in the blog or the books. Check out any of that stuff to refresh your memory and stay sharp. Today, we have a different sign of deception. Of course, we're switching to a new gear that is also related to about 4 or 5 past episodes that we've discussed. So today we're talking about something that's happening on the legs. Remember, the legs are a very popular area for deception to occur. Why? Well, the reason is because most people know that when talking with each other, they like to watch the face. It's polite to look people in the eye, maintain good eye contact, etc. Therefore, the legs, because they are usually under a table due to the fact that people speak sitting down across the table or at a desk or something like that, in addition, because people know that we're watching each other's faces, the legs are a very popular place for body leakage to occur. Why is this? Well, remember, there is that battle between the conscious and the unconscious. The unconscious is fighting for the truth. It is trying to leak as many signs of deception as possible, as many truthful body language indicators. The conscious is trying to stifle those or mask them, hide them somehow. So those two kind of come up with a middle ground, and the conscious says to the unconscious, who is trying to leak these behaviors, all of a sudden the unconscious puts something to the legs, and the conscious says, that's fine, I'll allow it because I know that consciously we watch each other's eyes or face or something. So then the unconscious gets a little satisfaction that it gets to leak a behavior. The conscious is happy because it thinks no one's going to see the behavior. However, you can trick all of that and watch the legs. We talked about that in episode 47. Now keep in mind, I speak about the conscious and the unconscious almost like they're two separate people fighting it out. It's one mind. It's the same thing. It's separate realities or dimensions of your mind, so to speak. So keep that on your radar as well. It's something that's going on, but it's not two separate entities. It is one and the same. All right, so today we're going to dive into, like I said, a behavior relating to the legs. We've talked about several of them before. I'll recap them in a little bit. But first, I need to tell you about the deception tip today. So here it is, deception tip number 56. Liars may lock their ankles together and tuck their feet back under the chair, combining the X with backing away. Here it is again, deception tip number 56.
Liars may lock their ankles together and tuck their feet back under the chair, combining the X with backing away. So let's break this down. There is a combination of signs that we've already talked about built into this one. So this could potentially be a cluster or pattern of behaviors. However, because it is all related to the legs, it's in one area, one instance, and it's kind of like one gesture, it's not really considered a pattern or cluster. It's like if someone folds their arms and curls up a little bit and kind of leans back, that could potentially be 3 separate signs of deception. It could be arm folding that we talked about in episode 1. It could be taking up less space, which we've talked about before, and it could also be the backing away. So it could be 3 different signs there, but because it is all together a little bit, it's only considered one sign. Now, the take up space we talked about in episode 40, and the backing away we talked about in episode 29. So if you want to refresh your memory, go ahead, hit those up, and check them out. But today, it is the legs and the different behaviors. What are those 3 different behaviors? We have locked ankles, we have tucked their feet with an X, and then tucking under the chair, which is backing away. So locked ankles, we've got the X, and then we've got backing away. We're going to talk more about where those happen and where we went into each one of those a little bit more coming up right after this.
Not only can you listen to these deception tips, you can also watch a quick video explaining each one. Subscribe to the Body Language YouTube channel today.
Welcome back to episode 56 of the Deception Tips podcast, where you are learning how to read people and detect deceit so that you will never be lied to again. Now, of course, you will always be lied to, but you will never be taken advantage of by lies again. Why? Because you will be able to see through them, and you will know when someone is lying. Today, we are talking about the legs. We have 3 different behaviors that are going on in the legs that are combining into one sign that is kind of seen as a cluster or pattern of behaviors, but because it is in one isolated area, it is not taken as a reliable or full pattern or cluster of behaviors. So, what are those 3 signs? We've got locked ankles, we've got the X of the legs, and we have tucking underneath, which is backing away. Where did we talk about those? Well, we have locked ankles, which we discussed way back in episode 22. Now, locked ankles is like when someone just crosses their ankles, hooking their feet together. We discussed how they could do this when they're seated. Seated liars may lock their ankles, and how they could kind of pull to almost release some stress or tension involved. It's kind of like an inhibitory behavior. They're trying to release something, or they're trying to not do something, maybe not run away. It is kind of like a pacification gesture. They may want to run away, but they know they can't, so they lock their ankles together and push to kind of release that desire to run away, or whatever it may be. But that is how that one looks. Then we have the X. When did we talk about that? That was not so long ago in episode number 49, when we talked about the calf muscle. How liars who are sitting usually, they may cross their legs at the calf muscle, making an X-like position with the bottoms of their legs. It's not typical crossing of the legs like the figure 4 position or leg over leg like the Brits do, or people in England, or people in America do it as well, but it's typically known as the British style of crossing the legs, or English style of crossing the legs, whereas the other one that you see more in America is the figure 4 position. Fun fact, back in the World Wars, is that the American spies were caught right away for sitting with their legs in the figure 4 position, because the people over there knew that no one over there sat like that. So then they needed to retrain their spies to sit like they do over there when in Rome, type of a deal. Anyway, the next sign that we have in this little bundle is tucking the legs under the chair, which is backing away. And we talked about this I mentioned it before, episode 29, when we discussed stepping backward. Now, why do people step backward? It is because if they're given an accusation, something is thrown at them, they step backward, they get away from it, they want to ward it off. Usually you see like a hand raise go up with that kind of like, hey, I'm innocent, don't shoot type of a behavior. So that is how that is all playing out. One thing I do want to mention when it comes to this leg behavior of crossing, locking ankles, tucking them under, is that we've kind of seen a similar thing before, which I have mentioned, and it is folding the arms. You can fold your arms and kind of tuck back and go away, and it's similar to crossing the legs. So the arms and the legs have similar stuff. What does it mean? Well, it could mean defensiveness, withdrawal, something like that, which is the same as folding the arms. Now, we talked about that way long ago. That was our episode number 1. So I encourage you to listen to that, listen to this, see the difference. Hopefully I've improved. Anyway, moving on, we have this sign. So that what they're doing is they're locking their ankles together. That is going to release some stress and tension because it's locked. They're putting tension on their ankles. They're pulling them, they're pushing them, they're putting pressure down there, which is going to release that stress, tension, and anxiety that's building up as a result of them being in that lying situation. In addition, they're going to tuck their feet back under the chair. What is this accomplishing? This is accomplishing the taking up less space because they're tucking them under. I mentioned where that was from, so go ahead and listen to that. That was episode number 40. They're taking up less space by tucking their feet under the chair. In addition, that's also a sign of withdrawal. They're pulling back from the situation. Usually when they're seated, they're probably opposite of the target, so they're pulling away from that target. They're pulling back. Then, since they've tucked their feet and crossed their ankles or locked their ankles, that means that their legs are also crossed at the calf muscle, making that X. What does that X do? That X is like blocking perceptions. They're unconsciously blocking off someone else from reading their body language. It's kind of like in the movies when you see those vampire movies or something where people kind of put up their arms like an X, like stay away from me, or this was a holy cross, or, you see those kind of a deal where they do that. That's kind of what this resembles a little bit. They're blocking, they're warding off those perceptions by making that X. In addition, their entire body is going to be a little bit reserved, withdrawn. They've combined all three of those behaviors into one, so it is a sign of deception. However, keep in mind, this could happen in any number of circumstances. So let's say you're in an uncomfortable situation. You may be feeling that anxiety or tension, so you'll kind of cross your legs, lock your ankles, and tuck them back under your chair to be a little bit more reserved, withdrawn. It's like a shyness behavior. It's a comfort gesture. You may feel comfortable doing that. It's kind of like your legs giving themselves a hug. Just like how when we talked about arm folding, some people may fold their arms to kind of give themselves a hug. It's a comfort gesture. So keep that one in mind as well. In addition, it could also mean that they're cold. When someone is cold, what is the best thing to do? Curl up. You get your body close together. You reduce the space between all of your extremities, your limbs, etc. You bring them all to the core. So curling up, folding the legs in, tucking, locking the ankles could also mean that someone is a little bit chilly and they're just kind of curling up to bring themselves together. Again, a sign of comfort. Warmth is a comfort. So that could be another comfort gesture. Therefore, pay attention to that. Remember that not everything is a sign of deception, even though it could be a potential sign of deception. And even though this is kind of a pattern of behaviors, it's combined into one. It's one fluid movement or one fluid gesture. Therefore, it's not really considered a cluster. Now, if you saw them lock their ankles, tuck their feet back, they have the X going on, and they fold their arms, curl up, now we've got two separate kind of clusters being put together. That could mean something. Again, it could mean they're freezing cold and they're curling up. So pay attention to that. Be on the lookout for other signs to go with these signs so that you are always looking for patterns and clusters of behavior. I want to thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Deception Tips Podcast. I hope that you'll share it with your friends, subscribe to the feed, check out the Deception Tips videos, the blog, and take a look at the books I have available. And as always, tune in next week for a new Deception Tip.